Hello, everybody, and welcome to this GenAI panel discussion with me, ABK of Neo4j. The potential of GenAI is on everybody's mind these days. As technology people, sometimes we can get distracted by the implementation details and maybe even overwhelmed by the ridiculous volume of information, research papers, new platforms, everything that's happening out there. And it's hard to keep up, and it's hard to know what matters and what really doesn't matter. And so for this session, for this brilliant panel that we have together, I want to step back and first start with thinking about, what are the problems GenAI is solving? What's real, what's really getting some traction, and maybe where's all this headed, so that when we go back into the implementation details, we have some kind of guidance about where are we going? Is this really worth spending our time on or not? We have a fantastic panel of people here today together. We've got Lauren Sharman, Chia's Jeng Yang, and Ashleigh Faith. And Chia, gosh, you're going to have to help me if I got your name badly butchered there, okay? Awesome. So, guys, before we get started here, I'd love for you guys to introduce each other or introduce yourselves, and then we'll get right into the questions. Lauren, you're first on my screen. Let's start with you.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Sharman. I'm head of platform at OnePeak. We're a growth equity firm with $2 billion in assets under management, investing in founders building the next generation of software. I consider myself lucky to have a front seat to so much of the AI innovation taking place today, being driven by many of our portfolio companies, including Neo4j. So I'm super excited to dig into today's topic.
So happy to have you with us here today, Lauren. I mean, this is an amazing time to be, looking at the big landscape of what's going on. And thank you for your perspective on that. Next up on my screen, and Chia, it looks like you're up next.
Yeah, thanks for having me, ABK. It's great to be here. My name is Chia. I'm one of the co-founders of a early stage data infrastructure company called YHow.ai, and we help enterprises structure their information and represent it in ways that LLMs and humans can understand and collaborate on. And graphs and knowledge graphs are a natural, large part of what we do for a lot of enterprises trying to get a lot of value out of GenAI.
Awesome. And there's so much I want to learn about your experience, how you ended up with this part of the problem that you want to tackle. And from that vantage point, what are you seeing? I can't wait to get into that. Also here with us today, Ashleigh Faith. Ashleigh, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me. This is exciting. Graph, man, it is so critical to any of this AI working half decently, in my humble opinion. So I'm really excited to have a chat with folks that maybe disagree, maybe don't. I don't know. I guess we're going to find out, but it's still exciting nonetheless. Oh, and who am I? So if you're not familiar, I host and run a nonprofit YouTube channel called Is a Data Thing. It's just under my name if you want to go and check it out. And I really focus on dealing with data science and graph and search and a lot of things that go along with the graph space.
Which is amazing, right? It's the graph space now, this new purpose, thanks to GenAI, always been valuable, always been critical for so many things. And now suddenly apparently really works well for GenAI purposes.
Yeah.
So yeah. I love that whole aspect. All right, to start off our round of questions, we're going to go straight into the big, question here. A lot of people are doing basically the hello world of GenAI. Can you chat with your PDF? And that's a good place to start. It's a good place to learn about what you can do and what's possible. But is that really providing business value? What are you guys seeing? Who's taking that maybe first step and then taking the next step? What are those next steps really kind of looking like? And if anybody has a strong feeling, anybody want to jump straight into that?
I can at least say something about that, though. I saw somebody post recently something that was kind of provocative on that topic, which is chatting with your document is so 2023. And I thought, okay, maybe that, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree, but to your point, I think it's a great starting point. But maybe that also alludes to it's maybe not the biggest problem to solve.
Yeah. I'm with Ashleigh that we're that is feeling like a 2023 thing, and we're now moving well beyond these kind of bread and butter chatbots simulating and processing conversation. I think although it's very early days, I'm excited about what we're starting to see around sophisticated AI agents that are capable of autonomous reasoning and decision-making and multitasking across complex workflows. And while today those AI agents still need detailed prompts with step-by-step instructions, in many cases certain coding skills as well, it's only a matter of time until this will change and simple natural language prompts will suffice. So as a result, we believe that AI is really transitioning from the role of a supportive tool to that of an independent agent with full execution capability, yielding, this new sort of aha moment that we typically associate with creativity, these agentic moments where we'll see AI plan and complete a task without any human intervention, possibly with other, AI systems as well. So I do think, we're really moving beyond this ChatGPT conventional use of LLMs, this whole world of prompt and response, into a much more dynamic agentic use of LLMs. And that's super exciting.
And it feels like with some of the sort of agentic workflows, like it's shifting from, okay, you're having a chat with your PDF to like, actually you have basically a team of interns that that are really pretty competent, and you can set them off to do things for you. It's kind of that feeling of it's like every now and again, part of the conversation is like, okay, is this going to replace jobs? I'm firmly on the side of like, okay, no, this is just going to let us do even more amazing things. Like there's some things that are basically just annoying and not fun to do that we don't have to do as much of now. Like we can kind of hand it off to the interns. Chia, do you think that's about right? Or, what are you saying?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the correct direction. I think the bar has been lifted in terms of the amount of work that human versus computer can collaborate and contribute on within a particular workflow. And I think that a lot of what we're starting to see now with multi-agent systems is really that they are capable of a lot, but uncertainty really propagates throughout the systems, and we are still trying to figure out both guardrails and complex reasoning steps. And I like to think of kind of agentic systems and individual agents almost a little bit like mad genius. It's capable of a lot, but trying to control and hire and have a mad genius as an employee is probably a little bit challenging. And we're now starting to try to figure out some of these ways to control and run these systems. So absolutely, we're pretty early days. And I think a lot of what people are thinking about now is how can we best create ways for us to inject our own opinion or inject our own control over these systems at scale, because you obviously don't want to try to, the entire point of LLMs and LLM systems is not to try to hard code every single thing, but really try to make it work in a very flexible way. And I think that's where we're at.
And is that one of the things that knowledge graphs come in as kind of trying to help find that balance where you can have a representation of all the things you know, and maybe even some rule sets perhaps, or, different perspectives on like, here's the world that we're confident about, and here's the broader world on the LLM side, and it's kind of trying to match those together. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good way to phrase it. One of the things I like to talk about as an analogy is that there is a book that I enjoy very much. It's called The Checklist Manifesto. And it's a book by a Harvard professor that talks about how doctors and medical professionals benefit a lot from checklists. And doctors are obviously extremely intelligent, far smarter than myself, for example. And the fact that you want some kind of structured representation of the things that they should be doing and the things that they should know is, I think, very indicative that if you have someone really, really smart, they are obviously going to benefit from having some structure and maintaining consistency in that structure. And so I think, as you said, using graph structures as a way to represent the knowledge that they should have access to, and graph structures to represent the ways that they should act upon that information is going to be very, very important, because you do want fundamentally alignment to a workflow that, an LLM can't just simply go out and do anything that you want.
Well, and helping you capture what that knowledge is. So many times people don't know what they don't know, and they also don't know what they do know in a lot of the case, where I've seen a lot of the barriers to entry for graph have diminished, which is fabulous. But the concept is still kind of new to those getting into the space now. But I'm a firm believer in like a personal knowledge graph is a thing that is very quickly becoming a thing, and a lot of us just maybe don't know about it. That's where a lot of personalization is coming from a graph on the back end of, whatever the recommendation is you're doing, and what's a great use case for recommendations using LLMs, right? So there's like this interplay between what you may not even realize about yourself, either from your behaviors or, the knowledge that you maybe forgot you knew, and being able to harness it, right? Like there's so many cool use cases that I've seen for LLMs helping to just decode what a large organization knows and make decisions on it, like where there's a great place to go and mine for new resources. And it's an area that people have looked at and disregarded because it wasn't useful for their use case at that point. And that's just random knowledge floating around an organization, but now they can take action on it. And so I kind of see these interplays of things that knowledge graphs were already really good at, but now with that scale that it can have with the LLM is pretty exciting.
So that gets into a little bit of like some of the, I guess, business opportunities here, because it feels like there's a lot of people experimenting with like personal knowledge graphs, whether it's the kind of the hardware folks who are messing around with the pendants, I suppose. I don't know if there's different versions of that. So from the consumer side, trying to make some inroads there. And then certainly, as you're hinting, like even for organizations, institutional knowledge, trying to tap into that and make that a sort of reality. I mean, Lauren, across the broad spectrum from like people doing hardware stuff to people selling services to like consumer level stuff. Like what's the most of what you've been seeing people trying to, like on the startup level, I guess, or people who may be pitching to you guys, like, what are the trends, I suppose?
We find that at the infrastructure level, think large language models, it tends to be just way too expensive for startups to compete with the big incumbents like Google and Amazon and others who invest tens of billions of dollars into this Gen AI development every year with a focus on the mass market. And so instead, as longtime believers in vertical SaaS, we're seeing a ton of opportunity in vertical AI. These kinds of use cases don't only require smaller, more specialized models to be successful, but you also need processes and workflows and tools that are optimized for each vertical. And over time, the need for services to subside will subside that support these vertical AI players as we see AI agents start collaborating with each other more seamlessly. This is really, a space where we're finding a lot of opportunity and a space that we're already heavily invested in. Our portfolio companies include Accurate, who's revolutionizing insurance pricing and reserving with transparent AI, and Bright Flag, bringing AI to legal operations, and companies like Doc Planner, the healthcare tech leader who recently launched an agentic AI note-taking tool for doctors. So I think we're really just always on the lookout for startups like these that are leveraging proprietary industry data to deliver specialized systems and tools and products that bring fast time to value for their customers.
It seems like for each of the verticals you were just mentioning, the facts, I guess, on the ground are pretty important, right? Like take the raw facts that we have and make that available. Like take the unstructured text, make that available, let the LM process some of that maybe, and like maybe generate a knowledge graph around that. But at the end of the day, like when people are actually using that stuff, the source of the information matters. Like when there's a doctor's note, who was the doctor who took the note? Probably matters, right? What have they seen and all those kinds of things? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective. So that sort of industry specialization is key. You also alluded to something quite interesting about the environment that these players are operating in, right? And you mentioned graphs. Other companies of ours like RDoc are operating within a graph database powered environment to do really incredible things around driving business transformation. So they recently launched a partnership with Celonis, giving customers visibility into how IT and business performance relate to one another. So we think there's a ton of opportunity in vertical AI and beyond around startups who are really applying AI for greater business impact.
And Chia, for the people who are turning to Why How to help try to maybe take those first steps and like actually get a knowledge graph out of the data that they've got, do you see some vertical specialization that's happening, or people are trying to do horizontal plays? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think there definitely, I would say so. I think we even have other examples in our portfolio like HighGraph that are helping people with this sort of knowledge management and content distribution as well. So they're using AI to create a future where things like content personalization and predictive analytics and automated workflows really become the norm and not the exception. So there's all kinds of tooling, both in terms of sort of domain-specific verticals to, these business transformation plays taking place in Graph's environments, through to startups that are helping other startups to realize their objectives and to translate into these new systems.
Chia, does that resonate with you, like a startup helping other startups?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a few things that are really interesting as a trend that we're starting to see, which is that, number one, quite a lot of companies and large enterprises are approaching us because they're also interested in adopting some of these functionalities in-house for really the first time. And a lot of that is because, as I think we've all discussed, the barrier to entry has really dropped quite dramatically for quite a lot of different parts of the stack. And so what people are looking for is really, guidance as well as a bit of infra for the ability to be able to recreate some of these systems internally. And we're starting to see this more and more, I think, as ABK, you and I hang out on Medium quite a fair bit. We see that, a lot of these experiments, system architectures, case studies are published by the companies directly, by the data science teams directly, in a way that I think was less frequent than before. So we're really starting to see, I think, more confidence and aggressiveness from a lot of these enterprises in building these systems in-house. And I think a lot of what they are dealing with is some of the uncertainty and some of the difficulties trying to bring some of these agentic and LLM systems to production. And so that's where, for example, we come in. That's where a bunch of other infra providers come in. We also see, I think, to Lauren's point, that there are a lot of startups that are trying things and trying to push the boundaries of what's possible. And that's where, a lot of collaboration happens between startups in terms of trying to see, these are some of the new design patterns that are really, really interesting that actually bring business value to their underlying customers. And so we see quite a wide range of kind of design patterns really emerging within the space. And that's something I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're both talking about the startup angle because, there's also the thing that everybody has to, be cautious of when doing fast and playing hard on these topics is also like there's a lot of regulations and ethics coming down on these things. And it's, like a similar moment to GDPR is happening with the EU AI Act, right? So depending on where you want to do business or where you want your angel funding to come from, you really have to pay attention to some of these things. And, as I see these very dispersed areas of discussion happening, maybe because my brain is just seriously geared as a knowledge graph itself, but I'm like, this sounds like there should be a knowledge graph to contain, like, where are all the nodes where people are talking about these moments and how can people get a better understanding of it? Because you need to know these things for your business plans, because if, a few months from now, certain regulations, put things in place that you have to adhere to, and you did not, you can never plan for the future as well as you would like, of course, but, some of those plans that you had could be very disrupted, especially since this is such a hot topic right now. And so many people are moving so quickly to get regulations and standards in place. So it's just a fascinating area to watch, especially from a startup perspective, because so many startups that I know that have reached out to me specifically have been focused either on the architecture part that you just mentioned, like what does an architecture for this knowledge graph stuff look like when you have an AI? Or on the other side is, how can I better prepare to understand what's in my data, what my AI is doing when it comes to these ethics and these regulations that are coming in? So it's interesting to see that interplay is starting to show up even with suggestions that I'm giving.
I think that's a really fascinating point, and I'm glad that you mentioned sort of these cautions as well, because I would say that, ironically, we're also investing in and interested in investing more into AI solutions to some of the problems that AI is exacerbating. So, for example, generative AI is enabling these highly specific and personalized attacks at unprecedented scale. We're really proud to invest in solutions to this, like Simulate, whose AI Copilot brings the first of its kind dynamic attack planner. And this is an area growing in importance across a breadth of subjects like cyber safety, compliance, regulation, ethics. All of these companies emerging who are helping keep other companies and their data safe.
AI is fun and exciting and awesome, and I'm glad it exists. However, yes, guardrails. I think somebody else already mentioned guardrails.
Yeah.
It goes back to, Malcolm in Jurassic Park. Sometimes, you just got to take a moment before you do it. Do it right with a knowledge graph, then you know what you're doing a little bit better.
It's a great reference. And that was part of the motivation behind this whole panel, right? It was like, okay, we can get so enamored of like just building stuff and just look at all the cool stuff we can do. And like, hang on, let's not get crazy here. This is one of those times where we do need to take the time as we're making the stuff happen, make sure like that we're not causing more problems than we're solving, kind of along the way. And there's an angle of that I want to also ask about, which sometimes I feel a shifted perspective myself, where like the work we're doing on the ground, the implementation side, sometimes it feels like what we're trying to do is just accelerate AGI. Like the whole goal is like, can we make AGI happen tomorrow? Because if we can, then even for like business plans or whatever, well, suddenly all those change. Like if that actually does happen, the kind of the near term things might no longer be relevant. It's the whole, you decide to go to Rome, you can, step out your door and start walking and you'll make progress towards Rome. Or you can go to the airport and that might take a little bit of extra time because you've got to get to the airport. You have to hope that planes exist if planes don't exist. And like all these things then factor into like, do you build the stuff to help you get there faster? Or do you just start moving along, the path that kind of works today? And it feels like here where we are today, pre-AGI, assuming that AGI is an event that happens eventually, we're still just progressing. Like, here's the tools we've got, and we are correctly just making progress with those. Is there a risk, do any of you think that like, okay, let's say AGI happens, how much of the things we're trying to do today have been wasted? We're walking to Rome.
Oh, you know what? I always, as much as I want to be the one that talks about the sexy, fun, cool things, I am also the person that talks about the really boring things that nobody wants to talk about, which is your data needs to be nice and clean. Well, it's as clean as you can get it because, let's all be honest, there's no like perfectly clean data, but that will never be a wasted effort, right? Well, I shouldn't say never. Sometimes you have data that you should not clean because it's not useful. So there's that. But there's certain aspects to getting to the AGI space that you just have to think it's a net good, right? So, okay, now I have all this customer data, but nobody knows how to use it. Nobody really knows what's in it. And, that could be risky from a compliance perspective. So, let's check the box on that and make sure we're doing the good things that we should be doing. But also, what good stuff can we get out of that? Does anybody even understand that? Because oftentimes, there's the one person that's worked here and that's been their whole thing, is that one data set, and it's a great pristine data set, but nobody knows about it. Or it's not a great pristine data set, and only that one person knows how to wrangle the information out of it. I feel like there's moments like that where if we look at what can be useful, even, if and when we get to that AGI space, I think those are the things to focus on because they're going to be good no matter which way it goes.
Right. It maybe in some ways, if I could extend that, like, if you've trained your LLM on the internet and you've got crazy 4chan stuff and crazy Reddit stuff, and like maybe some of it's good, but some of it's less good, that's part of the data prep. That's part of the cleansing, right? Like you don't want that to be there forever. So maybe before we get to AGI, let's clean our house a little bit first so that the AGI when it arrives, and let me be the first to welcome our overlords, they will know us as good people with good things that we can build on, not a bunch of garbage data and garbage, directions. Do you guys, Lauren Chia, what do you guys think about this?
I tend to agree. I think My hot take would be that I don't think we're anywhere close to AGI at this stage. I believe it's really going to take a long time to get there, even though machines will get more and more intelligent over time. It's interesting that the market participants who talk about AGI being around the corner tend to be the ones fundraising for their next GenAI business. So all this needs to be taken with a grain of salt. There's still real problems that are preventing more enterprise customers from engaging in this space. A lot of their forays have been experimental. They haven't been integrated into products more meaningfully because of shortcomings such as hallucinations and a lack of explainability. So we're really excited to see more of these big problems and barriers being solved that will lead to much greater adoption and much greater innovation in this fast-moving space.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting question. I think first the definition and goalposts for AGI keep moving, so I think that's part of what makes it a difficult conversation. But I think it's certainly true that we are breaking milestones that previously was thought to be very far out or structurally impossible, and I think these are things to be celebrated. But when I hear this question, it reminds me of an anecdote at an event that we went to, and there were a few founders on the panel, and a couple of them, said AGI is, 2 to 3 years away, 3 to 5 years away. And the last founder, who was a document parsing tool, a founder for a document parsing tool, basically said AGI is 20 years away because we still can't figure out how to parse PDFs. And so I think that's a reflection of some of the things that are, while very impressive about AI, there are still very, very common day-to-day tasks where it falls short quite dramatically. And, I think that's a lot of, it does reflect some of what the industry optimizes for sometimes, right? It's really impressive to see certain reasoning tasks and certain tools and processes being dramatically kind of improved upon, and then some of the, I think, more day-to-day stuff, really we're still incrementally improving upon that. And so my personal perspective is we're going to see, some things in a few years be extremely impressive and extremely disruptive, and some things we're still going to struggle with, which I think is, basically what life is like with technology today anyway.
On the capability of parsing too, right? That's, I think, a little playing on a little bit of what you both said is, okay, let's say you can parse the data no matter what it is, and it's, great no matter what happens. But then, the barrier to entry might be, but I'm a small, tiny company and I don't have the money to do that thing, right? So now you're still blocked from it, and it's mostly just because the thing is too cost prohibitive. And so, that's why we can see what we can see today. LLMs are not new, right? The only reason we're seeing them so much now is because we have, cheaper compute power and all these other things that are coming about. That was the perfect storm to make them as popular as they are now. But I think, outside of the things that we've discussed, one thing I don't hear a lot about, which is why I wanted to chime in here, is and also identifying what is unique in your data and figuring out when you want that to be exposed to the AI and when you don't want it to be exposed to the AI. Because if you put too much of all your really great stuff into name your AI, especially the LLMs, because of the way they learn, it's going to start to create more synthetic data, right? Because you're putting things in, they cannot be taken back out, and so therefore all of that stuff is then going into the main brain, which is what we want, in certain aspects. But I also feel like a lot of companies really, and because it's not usually part of the conversation about data cleanliness and, the different parsing capabilities and all these other things that we talk about, is what is unique about your data that you maybe don't want to put into the AI? Because I don't think that that's often part of that conversation. But, especially with the way that LLMs are, you have to really identify and understand the value of the data proposition you have.
I think that's fantastic, and what a great setup. So we're just about out of time, so I'd love to have closing thoughts from you guys. And Ashleigh, if you could just extend that a little bit, and thinking back to our audience of developers that are here listening today, the one piece of advice, if they haven't yet done something with GenAI, and either they want to leave their company and do a startup, or they've got an initiative in the company they want to do, what's the one thing they should keep in mind?
understanding what unique data you are working with or that you want to work with, and you know where there's like these little pockets of information. Like a lot of the LLMs don't understand cultural context. If you know where there's this amazing data set, or you can start to create data sets for, maybe marginalized groups or, areas that don't have a lot of information out there, and we want that greater representation in the AI, then capitalize on that and really, boost those activities. Or, what things already exist that you maybe want to play around with small language models, or doing machine learning that's not an LLM, because those things still exist and are useful. So I would say like that interplay of uniqueness and, kind of tapping in or helping to foster some additional data creation from areas that you don't really see too often. And also playing with smaller language models or other applications that will feed into this larger narrative.
That's awesome. Chia, parting thoughts for developers?
Yeah, I am really excited about the future because I'm really excited about the potential alternatives to stochastic approaches to knowledge and representation and guardrails. And I think that everyone in this room is contributing a lot to how we are going to create more deterministic systems that are accessible, scalable, and easy to use. And so I think that's the future that we're all trying to get closer and closer to.
Fantastic. Lauren, parting thoughts?
That's wonderful. I share Chia's enthusiasm, and I would encourage everyone, all the developers who are thinking entrepreneurially, to anchor themselves in solving real problems. Just building on sort of my previous comment, enterprises want to be using AI in their mission critical applications, right? But that's challenging because of the unpredictable nature of LLMs leading to hallucinations, or the paths from the prompt of an LLM to the answer being a black box, which can't be explained. So there's tremendous amount of opportunity for startups that are presenting solutions to these challenges and giving enterprises the confidence to use AI in their mission critical applications, unlocking a whole range of otherwise very sensitive enterprise use cases, and really excited to see more innovation around that.
That's awesome. Thank you all for joining us today. This is such a great conversation. As always, we could just keep doing this for another hour. We just have the half hour today together, but we'll look for other opportunities to talk. And if everybody has any questions, please post them in the chat. I'll be in the chat, during the Notes conference. Happy to answer questions there and forward them to everybody. If you've got more things you'd like to follow up on, so please don't hold back. Thanks, everybody. Have a good Notes.